Hey guys, Nepo and Hans Niemann face off again, here in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, in the penultimate round of the UzChess Cup, a super tournament, where lots of top GMs are playing, and also I am playing in the open section. I will show you the game between Nepo and Hans. I will show you a couple of more other games. In one game, a tragedy happened. I've never seen anything like this. You will be impressed. And a couple of more very interesting and instructive games. Mine will be the last one. Also a roller coaster ride. You will enjoy it. Let's dive into this. So the first game that I want to show you is Nepo between Nepo and Hans. So Nepo played 35 moves of prep in this game. 35 moves. And actually this was his prep for the World Chess Championship match against none other than Magnus Carlsen. He said in the post-game interview that this was the line that he prepared jointly with Peter Leko. These days, Peter Leko is coaching the young Vincent Keimer, and in 2021, he was the second to Jan NEPOMNIACHTCHI. For those who don't know who Peter Leko is, he's one of the strongest players in the history of the game. He played a World Chess Championship match against Kramnik, drew that match, and Kramnik retained his title in 2004. Yeah, so let's dive into the game between Jan and Hans. Crazy game, guys. So this is the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish, and we get the so-called anti-martial variation. So before d4, and Magnus did not go for this in the match between Jan and Magnus, but this prep was waiting for the moment when it is needed. And at first glance, it looks like a very dry position. So white trades the queens, and maybe Hans was thinking, okay, Jan wants just to make a quick draw with me, he's afraid of me now, something like this. But no, Nepo did not want to make a quick draw. He went knight d2, and here everything Black is doing is very logical. Black is putting pressure on f2, but apparently this was like Jan has lured his opponent into his own territory, going bishop e3 and voluntarily doubling the pawns. Very often, such doubled pawns are not that bad because they control lots of important squares. And this was obviously all Jan's prep. This is move 16. Let me remind you that his prep ended on move 36. And he played like the first 35 moves, he blitzed them like within seconds. And he was accumulating time, not spending it, because with each move, he got an extra 30 seconds added to his clock. So he started out with 1.5 hours, and now he already has close to 1 hour and 40 minutes. And this is exactly what is the case for many more moves. So bishop d5 attacks the rook, c6 blocks, bishop draws back, bishop e6, offers a trade of yet another pair of pieces, rook d1, rook d8, they trade the rooks, they trade the bishops, and here you can take with the rook, but then the d file will belong to white, so Black decides to take with the pawn, which is the top engine move. Hans is doing everything correctly. He's not in his prep, obviously, he has spent already close to 1 hour. Whereas Nepo is still in his prep, because this is just move 21. The prep is just beginning here. He goes king f1. Knight drops back, the knight attacks this pawn, and of course white can take this pawn, but then Black will take this pawn and it will be the driest endgame imaginable. So white does not do that. Instead, white marches the king in the bonk cloud manner, marches the king in the center. The king belongs in the center in such endgames. The king should be an active piece. Knight takes. And now white does not take because the knight has to stay guarding the d2 square, because if white takes, the rook will infiltrate for Black and it will be bad news for white. Black will start playing for a win. Instead, white offers a trade of rooks. And after this trade, white finally captures the pawn back. Now we get this knight endgame where each side has 6 pawns. And at first glance, again, this looks like a complete draw, but this is where things are starting to get interesting. So c5, because this pawn was hanging. And Jan went king f3, and after the game he posted in his Telegram channel in Russian. He has this blog where he sometimes posts things. He posted a screenshot of his prep, actually, where it was written, and he in the post-game interview he said that this was these were some notes by Peter Leko. They were in English, not in Russian, the notes. And the screenshot said, "Here the psychological test begins." And Jan said, I don't know what kind of psychological test he was referring to, Peter, because yeah, this was 5 years ago. I don't remember all the details, but I remembered the line. And probably the psychological test is whether the the chess player playing with the black pieces, that is Magnus Carlsen, had he chosen this line, or in this case, Hans Niemann, whether this player can defend this endgame. Because even though we have equal amount of pawns, equal number of pawns, White's king is more active, and White is the first who creates the threats. But for the time being, Black is doing everything correctly. This is move 27. Nepo is still in his prep. King f8, knight c6, king a8. Slowly the king marches closer to where the action begins. Knight b8, attacking the pawn. Now a5 would be a mistake. This pawn will be gobbled next, and it's not a good idea to spend time moving the pawn. You need to march with your king further. King d8. Again, Hans is not in his prep, but he's doing everything in the correct way. He gives up the pawn on a6. But now the knight is stranded. Probably that was what Hans was banking on. He went king c7. But apparently, this was the only mistake he made in this game, and this was enough. This was the fatal mistake. You just make one mistake on move 30, because you are no longer in your prep on move 30. Most people don't have such deep prep, but for the World Chess Championship match, sometimes they do. And Jan is winning. Why? You might think, where is this knight headed? Where is it going? c5 is protected, b4 is protected, c7 and b8, all those squares are controlled by Black's king. Black will just win this knight, right? 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 King f4, king b7, king e5. White has no intention of saving this knight. White is giving up this knight to take the pawn. Now the knight of Black is hanging, and the pawn is hanging. Jan is still blitzing his moves. Knight draws back. White takes the pawn. Now White has 3 pawns for the knight, and they are marching forward. Now you can go king a5, trying to hold on to this pawn, but then White will switch to going first b3, protecting this pawn, and then will push the e pawn, and probably this will not help Black. Black decided to try and take at least one of the pawns, forking White like this, but it doesn't matter, it's still losing. And if you were playing with the white pieces here, which pawn would you preserve? Honest question for you guys. Would you preserve the e pawn or the h pawn? If your answer is the e pawn, you are goddamn right, because this pawn is a passed pawn and it needs to be pushed. You know this rule? Passed pawns should be pushed. So it is pushed. Black takes the h pawn. White takes the b pawn. White still has 3 pawns for the knight, and there are 3 connected passed pawns on the queen side. And also, there is 1 pawn here that is also a passer, and it's unstoppable. Well, it is stoppable, but not all of them at the same time. You cannot stop all of them. The knight is not a piece that can stop 4 passed pawns. Knight g4, for the time being, stopping the advancement of this pawn, but just king c5. The king will go here, and then the pawn will be pushed. h5, Black desperately tries to go for some counterplay of their own, pushing their pawns, because now they have the kingside pawn majority. But Nepo does everything correctly. By the way, I think move 36, king takes b4, is the only move where Nepo spent some time thinking. He spent several minutes just making sure that it's all right. Actually, he was probably choosing between taking and going e5, and both moves win, according to the engine. He took knight g4, so the king marched here. He protected his a4 pawn. Now the e pawn will march. It is marching, e6, and now it is a very instructive moment. Of course, this is very much winning in many ways, but you don't have to rush. As the old Latin saying goes, festina lente. You should rush slowly. This is the literal translation. So you should not rush to in too fast a manner. When you are winning, you should first and foremost prevent your opponent's counterplay, and only thereafter can you push your pawns, for example. So what is the source of black's counterplay? Those 2 pawns. If you just blindly go head first forward, pushing your pawn, maybe you'll win still. But you will have to calculate what happens if black also pushes their pawns, creating a pass pawn there. Black can give up the knight for this e-pawn. So this gets messy. You don't have to do this. You can just go king e4, and then king f5, and then take those pawns. King g5 or king g6, and take one of those pawns and prevent any counterplay, which is exactly what Jan is doing. Now he goes a5. He even is not rushing it. He can, of course, take the h-pawn. This is also winning, but he wants to push all his pawns to create a situation where the king does not know where to go to, because there are so many pawns marching. King d6. Now he finally he pushes a6. Already a7 is threatened, so knight c8 is the only move to prevent the queening, and now he takes the h-pawn. Yes, he gave up the e-pawn, but now there is no counterplay for black. Black only has this g-pawn that will never become a passed pawn, because white also has a g-pawn of their own. So white can just go with the king to the queen side now, push 3 pawns, and 3 connected passers will always win against a sole knight, which is obvious to both players, which is why here Hans Niemann resigns the game. And Jan Nepomniachtchi, in dramatic fashion, wins this game after both players refused to shake hands during the opening ceremony, the media day, and also both players exchanged some remarks on social media about each other. They definitely are not on good terms with each other, and I can imagine that Hans is furious after this game, and Nepo must feel good with some revenge after the last round defeat by Hans in their match, which I covered, by the way. Check out the video in this channel. I covered the most interesting games from their match in Belgrade, Serbia, which happened 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, something like this. So check it out. The video is in the channel. But there is an even bigger drama in this game. So this is the game between Nicolas Theodorou, a Greek grandmaster, and Nodirbek Abdusatorov, the Uzbek grandmaster, world number 4 or number 5 currently in live rankings. And Nodirbek, by the way, check out my podcast with Nodirbek. Very interesting conversation in English that we recorded, I think, a couple of months ago. So here, it's a draw. Even though Nodirbek has an extra pawn on the queen side, it cannot really break through, and opposite colored bishops in endgames usually have drawish tendencies. This is draw in like a dozen different ways. And here white goes king g3, attacking the rook. And you know what happens here? I've never seen something like this. Black resigns the game in this position. This is a dead draw. Black is even up a pawn. What happened? Why? Well, to understand what happened, you need to take a look at the video of this game. Nodirbek, in this position, put his hand on to his king and wanted to go king d5. Then he suddenly realized, oh, my rook is hanging. But his hand was already touching the king. He already almost made the move. The king, he did not let go, but he touched the king. He realized it. He put the king back. He looked at his opponent. He looked at the board again. And he realized that the king has no good moves. There are 2 legal moves for king. King d6 or king d5. Doesn't matter where the king goes. White will take the rook next. So he completely forgot the rook. Probably, you know what happened probably? Probably he was calculating something like rook e2 or rook c2, and then rook g6 check, and then king d5. And he was calculating, and then, okay, king d5, and he mixed up the move order. That's what happened, I guarantee you. That's what happened, because he saw, of course, that his rook was hanging. But he skipped a move Like he was in his calculation, and probably he was already thinking of what happens in a move. That happens sometimes. But to resign the position like this on the top level, wow, this happens once per several years, I think. And usually in rapid blitz, not in classical. This is crazy. My condolences to Nodirberg. Obviously, it's very painful to lose a game like this. Now, I wanted to show you this position. This is a funny one. Mukhidin Madaminov, the second of Jawahir Sindarov, got this endgame against Arjun Regasi. Actually, Mukhidin is just crushing everyone in this tournament. He is on shared first. He was on shared first. He has been on shared first throughout most of this tournament, actually. And he still is. He's sharing the first place after the penultimate round with his compatriot, Shamsuddin Wahidov. And here he had even a winning position sometime before that. So he had an endgame where he had a rook against a bishop. And black had a bishop and a pawn, but still, this is winning if you convert it in the correct way. But Arjun tricked him. Arjun here went b4 and gave up all his queenside, and this is a theoretical draw, which reminds me of the game between Jawahir Sindarov, who is the boss of Mukhidin Madaminov. Mukhidin is his second. He was the youngest, second at the candidates tournament this year, and his prep is outstanding. Obviously, Jawahir has been aided a lot by his work. And Jawahir also went to a similar endgame with Anish Giri, where he had a rook against black's light-squared bishop, but black's bishop controlled all the infiltration squares, and Anish comfortably made a draw. So here again, Arjun comfortably made a draw because white cannot just cannot break through, even though white has a rook and a pawn actually, because there are two pawns here on the h file against the bishop, but it's still a draw. Why it is a draw? Because actually the king wants to infiltrate here, but if black stays on this diagonal, on the b1 h7 diagonal, the one highlighted in red, then the king cannot go to g6, and there are no ideas for white to mate black or win the h6 pawn, and it's just a draw. So after several moves, poking and prodding, they agreed to a draw. So Arjun survived this complicated position, but Mukhidin is very strong. He's not even 2600 yet, but he will be after this tournament. And probably he has good chances of becoming a super GM. One more in Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is booming chess-wise. And also not only chess-wise. I can attest. I've been here several times already. This is my, I think, 4th time in Tashkent, the capital, and there are lots of new buildings. The country is developing, and kudos to the Chess Federation, because they really do a lot to support chess, and thanks to them for inviting me to this tournament. So okay, this game I also wanted to show you, this end game between Yakuboev and Mamedyarov. Yakuboev is another Uzbek player, and Mamedyarov is a very strong Azeri grandmaster who is currently coaching Yagiz Khan Ertogmush, the Turkish prodigy, who is the strongest 14-year-old the chess has ever seen. So these are not mine, the words. They are by Magnus Carlsen, so he knows what he's talking about. So Mamedyarov is these days mostly coaching, but he's very dangerous. Obviously, he has been 2825, something like that, his peak rating. So he's been very, very, very high rated, and he still is a menace over the board. And here, apparently, he is close to losing if white finds the plan of going h4 and h5. So the position is crazy. White has this e-pawn, but all black's forces are holding hands to control this e8 square, like Hodor in the Game of Thrones. Like, hold the door, Hodor. This is exactly what they are doing. White wants to break through, but cannot. But actually, white can break through. But white has just 30 seconds, and white does not find the winning plan. The winning plan is h4, wanting to push h5. And the problem is that this light squared bishop is overloaded. it has, first of all, to stay guarding the e8 square to prevent the queening. And second of all, it has to stay on this diagonal, because otherwise white will harass black's king on this diagonal, b1, h7 diagonal. And it cannot do both. After h5, white has g4, a very thematic breakthrough. And if black takes, queen takes. And now h5 is again threatened. And also the rook is hanging 2 times. So black has to go rook a8. Also, black has threats of their own, checking like this. And so white has to spend the tempo defending from rook a1 check. And white is completely winning. For example, if the bishop moves along this diagonal, white will be able to make a new queen and win. So if the bishop goes here, for example, then we have queen f5 check, and this king will not survive. If king goes here, then bishop d2. And you know, opposite colored bishops always favor the attacking sides. Here it is exactly the case. So this is losing for black. The bishop cannot do anything, and h5 is coming, and then the bishop retreats, and queen f5 will come, and the king will either get checkmated, or white will make this queen if the bishop moves there, and black will have to give up the queen for this rook and pawn, and it will be lost. But Nodirbek Yakuboev did not find all this h4 idea. He went queen d6, and chess is brutal. Sometimes you have a winning position, but you spoil it. Rook c6. Now I drew some arrows. So first of all, if white goes e8 queen, we take, and we take like this, and these pawns will march, and this is a winning endgame for black. White goes f4, trying to harass this bishop, but it is too late already. c3. This pawn is marching, and the engine says that after king f2 there are some drawing chances, but humanly speaking, this is very hard, and with 40 seconds on the clock, very hard to find this. f5 is the move that white played. Bishop f7, king h2, and this is already lost. c2, bishop here. If black pushes the pawn and queens, white wants to make a queen of their own and hope to save this endgame. But this is also a draw, because black has this h5, king h6, king g5 idea to win the game, to win the second pawn. But Mamedyarov didn't even go for this. He did not make the queen. Instead, he went rook c4, attacked the bishop, and then went rook e4. And you know this classical chess rule, rooks belong behind passed pawns. This goes for both the situation where you have the passed pawn and you want to put your rook behind your passed pawn. And also this applies to the rule where you are fighting against your opponent's passed pawn. It's also best to put your rook behind that passed pawn. Now the rook and the bishop are comfortably controlling this pawn, and black is just winning. White will never push this pawn further, and black just here, like white decides to trade the rooks, but this is just completely winning. Black will always keep control of this e8 square. Black's king will go here and take this pawn. The bishop of white has to stay guarding the queen in square, so the king will later come here, and the pawns will queen, and in 2 moves, here white resigned the game, and Shahryar Mamedyarov gets an important win. Before the last round, there are 2 people on shared first, 2 Uzbek players, Muhyiddin Madaminov and Shamsiddin Vohidov. Shamsiddin today made a draw, and against Vidit, I think. And on shared second place, there are NEPOMNIACHTCHI and Shahryar Mamedyarov, and maybe Arjun as well, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's anyone's tournament. So the gap between the first and the second place is half a point. So if Nepo or Shah win in the last round, they can get the first place, and there will be tie breaks for the first place. Very exciting. Stay tuned for the next recap. But before we leave it, let me show you my game against a young Uzbek master. I have 5 out of 7 before this round, and I'm fighting for the prizes. I'm playing on one of the top boards, and I'm playing Javahir Bozorov. Probably you know the name Javahir. It's popular in Uzbekistan, and it will be even more popular in Uzbekistan in upcoming years, I think, for an obvious reason, because Javahir Sindarov is a national hero. Even if he doesn't win the match against Gukesh, he still is. maybe he will win. Drop your predictions in the comments. But let me show you my game against this master. Very, very exciting game. So he played this setup offering to trade the queens, and I decided, you know what? Soviet coaches always love saying you should go into the endgame with youngsters, because youngsters usually calculate well, but in endgames, some endgame understanding of principles, chess books is required, and youngsters don't study this as much as the old guard did. So I decided, okay, let's go into an endgame. This is a very popular position, a tabia of sorts in the Pirc defense. And I remember that bishop c4 is the move in my files. Now I'm attacking the f7 pawn, and there is a move bishop e6 here, there is a move king e8, but there is another move bishop b4 which my opponent played, pinning my knight. And I remembered that I can take his pawn. He can attack my bishop, I draw back, he can take my pawn because my knight is pinned. And here I remembered knight g2 e2. And it seems like he can win yet another pawn. So currently material is equal, but he can win a pawn. But this would be a mistake, because if he takes with the rook, I have this move knight g3, which is very dangerous. So the knight is protecting the rook, and I am harassing the knight. And if the knight takes, I'm taken with the pawn. And whatever the rook does, if it takes this pawn, or if it drops back, doesn't matter. I go bishop g5 check, for example. Bishop g5 check, long castles, and look, I drew some arrows. I'm just crushing. It's not yet endgame, it's queenless middle game, and black's king is in dire straits. Checkmate is in one is threatened. This is a checkmate in one, because my bishops are monsters, and black is losing, even though black is up 2 pawns in this position. So this would be fatal. Taking with the rook is very bad. Taking with the knight is also bad, not so bad, but still bad, because rook f1. The knight is attacked, knight has to go here. Now bishop g5 check, and again long castles with check. And black has won 1 pawn, but is it worth it to suffer like this for just 1 pawn? It's not. The engine gives huge advantage to white already. So here my opponent thought for several minutes, thinking whether to munch on this pawn or not, but probably he was sure that I was still in my prep because I was playing too fast. Probably I should have played slowly to confuse him, but he went c6. He realized that his king safety needs prioritizing. And here I castled, we traded, and I went here, and the position is in the balance. Actually, the engine says that the long castling was the better plan. That would have given me some advantage, but here I don't have any advantage. It's just an interesting position to play. He goes knight here, rook d1, he sidesteps with his king, I go a3, and I decide, okay, he can spoil my pawn structure, but I will have the 2 bishops advantage, which is exactly what happens. And the position is in the balance. The 2 bishops are, of course, a menace, but my pawns are horrible. So that makes this like a fair trade. a5, he wants to push a4 and then b5 and then put the knight on this outpost, preferably after trading the light squared bishop. That would be positionally very dangerous. So I have to prevent this. I push a4, top engine move, rook d8, and now f3. f3 is also very, very logical, very positional, because I'm preventing him from controlling these squares, because I anticipate that he will go with a knight to f6, and then f3 will come in handy. He goes knight f6, and I go bishop c5, harassing his rook drops back, and I go rook e1. And I'm quite proud of my time management in the first stage of this game, because I'm playing fast, I'm putting pressure on him, on the clock. And the position, well, the position is unclear. I don't know the evaluation, but I assume that I must be not worse because of my 2 bishops. The engine gives equality. Here he trades, and he pushes b6. And I was calculating here for a long time. Actually, he has just 20 minutes. He has spent lots of time because he was choosing what to do. But he's a strong player. I checked his online profile. He has the rating of around 2700 in Blitz on chess.com, so much higher than me. And in terms of FIDE rating, also much higher than me. So I understood that, obviously, yes, I will put pressure on the clock, but it's not going to be easy. And he attacked my bishop, and here I was calculating for, I think, almost 20 minutes. I was calculating bishop d6 check. He has to go here, and then rook e1, putting pressure on this pawn, and he has to push e4. And I didn't like this position. The engine says that f4 is the only move to retain equality for white, but I don't want to give him this protected passed pawn. And the engine still says that after bishop e5, I am controlling everything and holding everything together, but I don't like this position. So I decided to not go bishop d6. Instead, I went back. 20 minutes was too long of a thing here, but still I was... at this point, I wanted to be precise, and I had a huge lead on the clock, so I wanted to use it and not to rush it. He goes bishop e6, a move I did not expect. And now I realized that, okay, I can trade, but then I will have to suffer in that endgame with horrible pawns, and I will no longer have the two bishops advantage. I want him to take. That would help me undouble my pawns. So I decided, okay, that's logical. I go bishop f2, and obviously he's not wanting to take here. His plan is to put the knight on d5. But now if he puts the knight on d5, which was what was the idea behind bishop f2, that he wants to go knight d5, and here if he goes knight d5, I have bishop g3, and I will harass this pawn of his, and it will be already not better, but tiny bit better for white. So that's the plan. But now after bishop f2, he has e4, this pawn push. And here I spent lots of time. I spent here I spent just 3 minutes. I checked him, which is a very logical move, top engine move. He goes here, and here I spent 20 minutes out of my remaining half an hour. This is bad time management. This is a serious mistake by me, because you shouldn't do this. But I was calculating lots of forcing lines. So I was calculating the line king f2, e3 check, king here, knight d5, I take in c3. I have to take, he takes, now he's threatening this check, so I have to go here. And my plan is to take this pawn by going bishop f4 and bishop takes e3, but he has g5, for example, and the game goes on, and I wasn't really sure about this position. The engine says it's equal. Well, who am I to argue with the engine? But I wasn't sure. So king f2 I deemed too risky. Then I was also looking at the following line. Takes, knight takes, bishop takes, rook d7, checking, and I win a pawn on g7. The problem is he can either immediately push g5 or first trade and then push g5. And even though I'm up a pawn, look at these pawns on the queen side. This armada of pawns will be marching, and I thought this will not end well for me. Black has very good winning chances, because it doesn't matter that you're up a pawn if your opponent makes a queen. So this endgame I really didn't trust in. So I was really unhappy. I was calculating all this, and then I decided, okay, if he takes with a knight, I will not go for this bishop takes, rook d7. I will not take his pawn. Instead, I will go bishop e1, and I will try to hold this position, protecting everything. And the engine says this is best, actually. And the engine says actually that this move is best for black. But my opponent, probably being too materialistic, did not want to give me that pawn. He went bishop g4 instead, and I felt like a complete moron for spending 20 minutes calculating the line that did not happen even. At the time, I did not know whether bishop g4 is good or bad, but this was a surprising move to me. I went my rook with my rook to b1. He took the pawn. Turns out rook e1 would have given me close to equality, but I was not sure about the position after the trade of rooks. I went rook b1. He took, and here probably active defense was the way to go. Rook e1, pinning him, and yes, I'm no longer even, I'm not even down a pawn, but probably in future he will take this pawn after going like bishop h5, protecting the rook. But I need to give up the pawn. I need to live with that. I have the two bishops, so I have some compensation. Instead, here I went bishop e1, holding on to this pawn and thinking this was not just a defensive move. I wanted in some future to go even c4 and c5 or bishop a5, opening up this file. So I wanted counterplay actually, but this is too passive. He goes bishop e2 and he's completely paralyzing me. He now also has the move, the idea of rook f8 and rook f1 checkmate. And I was thinking here, I have 9 minutes already down on time, and I decide, okay, now I will sacrifice this pawn. So I admit defeat, moral defeat. I go bishop f2. I spend this tempi moving around my bishop, which was a bad idea, but still, game goes on. And this is not the end, actually. The evaluation will very soon change drastically. Let me spoil this for you. He goes rook d8. I go bishop e1 again, trying to harass his knight. He goes back. I go h3, creating a loft for my king to not get checkmated. And he trades the rooks. And here I realize I must be busted. I have just 1 minute on the clock. He's up a pawn, my pawns are weak. Next, he will win the remaining pawns of mine. He will either push b5 or not now because this is hanging, but he can go knight c5, for example, then take, and take with the bishop, and then take the remaining pawn. And even though this will be an opposite colored bishop's endgame with 3 connected passed pawns, this will be an easy win for him. So I come up with a trick. I go bishop g8, attacking his pawn. He goes here. Now I go c4. And once he takes my pawn, I go here, attacking the knight. And if he goes knight f6 or knight c5, I'm busted in this endgame. He will just slowly push his pawns and win this game. But somehow he falls for my trick. He goes bishop c2. And I have very good drawing chances because of this tactical shot c5. Now, if he takes, I will take on a5. He doesn't take, he pushes a4. I take on b6. He takes. And now I trade into this opposite colored bishop's endgame where I'm down 2 pawns, but I have real drawing chances. And you will see that, you will see how real they are in a second. I go bishop c3, attacking his pawn. He goes here. I go king f2. There is a study-like win for black here. Bishop takes g2 wins because my king it gets distracted from the queen side, and his king will march here, and I will have to give up my bishop for the a pawn, and then the pawn endgame will be winning for him. But it is far from obvious. Just sacrificing your bishop like this with 5 minutes on the clock. Not obvious. He did not see it. He went forward with his king. Also not bad. I go g3, preparing king e3. He goes here. I attack his pawn. He goes here. He's shouldering my king, preventing my king from advancing closer to the queen side. I go here. And now, suddenly, his pawns cannot move. I'm controlling this diagonal. He goes here. I go h4. He goes h5. And it's a draw. 0.0. It's completely a drawn position after king e1. He cannot break through. Now the engine has stalled a little bit, and you see the evil bar is closer to 0.0. It is a draw because his pawns cannot go forward. I'm controlling this diagonal. He tries going bishop g4, and here I can just stand on this diagonal. For example, bishop e7. If he goes here, I'm waiting with my bishop. He goes here, trying to push a3. I check him. He goes here, I return to this diagonal. Again, I'm preventing him from pushing the pawn. If he goes here again, I check him. If he tries going here, again preparing this, then my king is coming. And my king is in time to stop. And his pawn can go one step further, but no further. And yes, he can push the c pawn as well. For example, he can go c5. But then I'll just wait. I'll go king here, for example. And my bishop is preventing any nonsense there. I'm just standing here. He can go a2, and he can do nothing here. So this was the draw, kind of easy, and that was what I was planning. But something, I don't know, I hallucinated here. Instead of just waiting, I just went king f2. I forgot that my king has to stay closer, and now I'm losing. Because he has this beautiful, only winning move, sacrificing the pawn, c5. And once I take, he goes king c4. And I'm not in time. Had my king been on e1, it would have been a draw. I would be in time. But I'm not in time now. I go here, he goes here. Now again, if my king can go here and here, king d2 in one move, it's a draw. But I cannot go here in one move. I go here, 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 and unfortunately, his pawn is on a3 already, and I cannot just harass him with checks. He will queen the pawn. And here I resign the game. I don't know what happened, guys. It's the third time in this tournament that I lose. I've won 5 games and lost 3. All 3 games I lost in an equal endgame. All 3 games I was defending. It was a complicated endgame, but in all 3 I had equality. I had a rather obvious draw in all 3 of them. Probably this means that I need to study more endgames. Also that I need to work on my stamina, because I get tired, and not only do I play chess here, but I also record content and I do some other work. So I need to work on my sleep schedule and stuff like that to be more attentive to detail at the end of my games. Sadly, this game did not go my way. Tomorrow will be the last round. Wish me luck in the comments, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.